that led to, just kind of making some subtle changes. I lost about 90 pounds while I was still working construction. And then in doing so, that kind of inspired me to learn more and more about fitness, health, all of that stuff.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bello. Today I've got Mickey Jogoleff on the show. And I'm just thinking Mickey Jogoleff, except left. That helps so much. How are you, man? You're in Austin, did you say? Austin, Texas?
Doing good. And yes, currently in Austin.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, it's good to connect with you. Happy, recent birthday, like we talked about. Whatever people are listening to this, it may not be anywhere near your birthday, but you just celebrated 35 and you got a really cool story. I'm excited to share your story with the audience as well as get to learn more about you. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? What's your elevator pitch when someone's like, what do you do?
For me, I help people live a better life by making more money.
Man, that's a great way of summarizing it.
Thanks. Because typically that leads to curiosity. It was like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah. How do you do that? And tell me more. And do you have a book or a course or information? Like, where can I learn more? Right.
Yeah, just the tease, enough to keep them interested.
Exactly. That's good. That's good. And I saw your bio. You said you're a serial entrepreneur. You first started a construction company when you were a teenager. How old were you when you started that? And can you tell us a little bit about how that went, what you learned, things like that?
Yeah. So I would say like official first business was started when I was 17, and it was a joint venture with my dad and my brother. Up until that point, I had been doing small contract work, started at the age of 13 running my own jobs. But I grew up in the industry. My dad, my brother, uncles, even some of my aunts, like that's what they do. So I was on the job site from
Cool.
very young. And then, just kind of followed suit. I wasn't real good in school. So everyone was like, well, if you're gonna do something, it has to be with your hands. So I just went with that. And then, I got kicked out of high school, and so I was like, all right, cool. I guess this is a sign to just start working. So after that, dove in. Me and my dad and my brother had that company for, it was probably about 6 7 years before I transitioned into something else. But we did mostly residential remodels and room additions. Did a couple commercial TIs, things like that. Nothing super crazy, but most of it was just small single family home stuff.
Cool. So it sounds like you did that, family business for several years, got your hands dirty, that probably took a beating a little bit on your body, you said. I think lifting heavy things and just probably throwing at your back a couple times, I would imagine. Just did any of that ever happen? Just like, man, I shouldn't be lifting this much stuff all day long.
Yeah, I don't think I ever like. Thank God I never got seriously injured. So it didn't blow my back out. Didn't
That's good.
anything crazy. My brother cut a couple fingers off, but I'm lucky. I got off.
Jeez. With like a table saw or something or what?
Actually, it's funny enough, it was with a lawnmower.
Wow.
Yeah, and the best part about that story, this is very off topic, but the best part about the story, it happened on April 1st. So when he called us to tell us what
You
happened,
thought it was April Fool's.
we're like, no way. So we didn't get like, we didn't do anything. We didn't go to the hospital. We just, yeah,
That's the
whatever.
worst day to have an emergency.
Yeah.
Like, no one
There's
believes you.
no way this is true. And then it got later and later. We're like, where's Anthony? Maybe. I'm like, no, there's no way.
No.
So we went to bed and we woke up and he was at the house like, oh Jesus, he did get us.
Wow. Yeah,
uh,
that's an April Fool's that you'll never forget, or April 1st, rather.
for sure. So I know I got so sidetracked I forgot the question.
No, I was just asking a little bit about your story, man. Just the construction business, and you said you transitioned out. Did you transition straight into the fitness industry after that, or was there anything in between?
Oh yeah, I think it was you kind of led to injury. So I didn't injure myself. I did beat my body up, but most of it came. I mean, a lot of it happened on site, and with a lot of people that are in this industry, they know it's kind of feast or famine. So when there's work, you work excessively.
Yeah,
So when we had work, we were working 6 7 days a week.
all
50,
day.
yeah, about 15-hour days, just like banging it out. Some of that stuff we would do, like I said, the small TI stuff we would do, or commercial things we would do, kind of swing shifts. So we'd be in people's homes all day, and then at night do something that's a little more commercial when people are out of the office, just to get as much as we could done. But that wears on you. And for me, the compound effect was more outside of work. When I wasn't working, I was drinking heavily, I was eating crazy, I was always on the go. So everything was fast, convenient, whatever.
Junk
It's that
food.
led to, from the time we started the company till I was 21, so about 4 or 5 years, I put on about 100 pounds. And it was just
Whoa.
from, like I said, eating and drinking excessively.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I was like, all right, like I had a friend that kind of challenged me. I probably wouldn't have changed on my own, but my friend was like, hey, like what's going on? You don't look too good. And he rode me for a while until I got fed up, and I was like, hey, like what's it gonna take to get you off my back? And he was like, if you can do a single pull up, then I'll drop it. So I thought like, oh, for sure. I'm in construction and I pick up shit all day. So like,
I could
this
do
should be no
that.
problem. Yeah. And I was horribly like humiliated. I could barely even hang on to the bar. And so like most good friends, he laughed for a while and then was like, all right, I can help. Or like if you want, we can I can put you on a program or do something. But he had one contingency, and that was that you just can't show up drunk. Because, like I said, I was drinking heavily. So
Yep.
after work, I would start drinking right away. So you just can't show up drinking or having any alcohol, and then we can work out together. I'll show you what to do, or at least what I know. And so that led to me being active with intention versus just like building things all day,
Right.
and and then cutting back on drinking because I didn't stop drinking. I just like drank after we worked out, but
Post workout beer. Yeah.
yeah. Or I used to smoke cigarettes heavily, so we would joke we call it a little buff and puff, where we just like let's smoke cigarettes. That's real good.
Like a Popeye or something, I guess. Like he had his little pipe, right?
Yeah. There's probably funny times I was bench pressed with a cigarette in my mouth,
Wow.
but that led to just kind of making some subtle changes. I lost about 90 pounds while I was still working construction,
Cool.
and then in doing so, that kind of inspired me to learn more and more about fitness, health, all of that stuff, and then like a lot of people that have a pretty good physical transformation, friends and family start asking like, oh, like what did you do or how did you do this? So I started, giving out advice and then doing my best to educate myself more. So the advice that I did give wasn't just like making stuff up or just
Right.
just about like what I did, because obviously a lot of people like I could tell them what I did, but that may not work for everyone. So I was like, all right, I actually wanted to be helpful, and I was excited to learn more because I was liking the way that I was looking and feeling, and so I did that with contract work for a couple years. Got heavy into OCR, which is like obstacle course racing, so like Spartan race.
Spartan race. Yeah.
Yeah, and heavy involved in that. So I was racing probably every weekend or every other weekend.
Wow. That's a
And
lot. I did
uh,
like one Tough Mudder in 2013 and that's it. So I'm like every other weekend.
yeah,
Wow, that is quite a commitment. So you were doing Tough Mudders, Spartan races. Like what are the other races out there that you did?
there's a bunch of smaller ones.
Okay.
There's like Savage Race is actually bigger, so there's Savage. There used to be one called uh, Battle Frog, which was pretty cool. I think more like Special Forces made it or whatever, but I think they
Cool.
ended up going bankrupt. But then there's a bunch of other little like fun ones like Muddy Warrior and Mud Dash and all kinds of like littler ones. There's another one I think called Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
That's but like and some old wrestler, some like whatever, like put it on. But there's a
Yeah.
bunch of little ones like that would they're more like 5Ks and just kind of fun runs. But the majority of what I did was Spartan and then Tough Mudder. Me and my wife actually met on course at championship world sorry Spartan
Wow.
championship race.
That's cool. That's really cool. I always wonder how people meet, and these days everyone meets on dating apps. That's how I met my fiance. Not quite as an exciting story as meeting at an obstacle course race on the track, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
climbing up something or helping them up. That's really cool. That's really cool. So you really kind of went the other extreme in terms of starting to work out heavily, do these races every other weekend, and I think I see a lot of people kind of get obsessed in a good way. You find something that you're really passionate about and then you're the person working out all the time, eating healthy, making a grocery list, like drinking egg yolks and stuff. Was that kind of like the change that eventually happened for you?
I mean, I feel like you said. I think a lot of times when people go hard into fitness, I
You're like all in
yeah,
sometimes.
I think the funny part is sometimes I think that like people that are really good at fitness were probably addicted to something else in the past. It's just like
Yeah,
they have that all in mentality where it's like they don't do anything kind of half. So
or
it's like
go all
they
in.
give,
Yeah.
yeah, so they give up one obsession for another.
Yep.
And so for me, I did get to the point where I was probably, crazy with nutrition, like trying to be everything clean, this, that, whatever. But I honestly feel like for most people that comes from a place of ignorance or not really knowing. So the more I learned, the more freedom I have with food, the more control over have with the way that I look and feel without having to, drink gigabytes or eat off of some crazy list. And
Yeah.
then for me, it allowed it to be a little bit more sustainable long term. It's like me and my wife go out to dinner, we do whatever. Like prior to living in Austin, we traveled for about a year. to wherever the food looked good. We just like, because I most of the work that I do now is remote, so it's like we've been sending each other food pictures on Instagram. So it's like, all right, like why don't we just go check out these places? So
Yeah,
we hit the road and we traveled the nation to wherever the food looks good on Instagram. And
that's cool. That's cool.
so
Especially for fitness people, because a lot of times I know foodies that, I mean, they don't look like they're into fitness very much because they're trying all the donuts, they're trying all the cakes, and like they're taking pictures constantly. It's almost like you're tempting yourself with that environment because they've got to, if you've ever seen like the influencers on Instagram, they'll bring like their big white light, like the flash, to
yeah,
take a picture of this amazing setting of food. That's probably the pictures you were seeing on Instagram. I do know a few people who do that and they've built big pages, but it seems like they're constantly going to restaurant launches, and the temptation can probably get out of control when they're like, hey, here's all this free food that you could try and tell your audience about, and you're just eating junk all the time. But it sounds like you had a good balance of, enjoying traveling, trying some food out, getting some exercise in, so it wasn't too extreme. But I love how you mentioned earlier, a lot of fitness people tend to be obsessed. I think that's the case. They were likely obsessed or addicted to something else
yeah.
before they found this and became super passionate about it. So how did you start to learn a little bit more? I mean, did you just dive into YouTube videos? Did you start reading any books on the nutrition? Did you ever follow like that Scooby guy back in the day who had that blog, like the old school blog? I remember finding his stuff and I was like, yeah, this is solid.
So yeah, a lot of it at first was just self education. I was pretty much like self taught up until me and my wife opened a gym. So like we met on course. We set our wedding date within 2 weeks of meeting each other, and then a couple months later, we decided let's go into business together. So we opened a gym that was tailored towards obstacle course racing because that's what we're into. It's like, oh, let's do this. Um, and then we were like, we'll just build a place that we would want to train. And then we realized real quick that that's not a really good way to make a business. Is just do what we want. So we had pivot, learn real fast, and in doing so, I wanted to learn a lot better how to serve clients, get better results, both with training and nutrition. And so, like I said, a lot of that at first was just like most people's like, oh, clean eating, meal prep, or portion control, or you eat these things at this amount of time and you'll be fine. Telling
Yeah.
people you should eat 6 meals a day and all of this like nonsense, right? And,
Right.
um, and then as we had talked about, like my results were kind of dependent on max effort, right?
Okay.
And as the business continued to grow, I couldn't necessarily put the same amount of time and energy into my fitness because I had a business to build and run. And so kind of reached a weird pivotal point where I was like, all right, like I can either sacrifice the business or I can sacrifice quality of health. I didn't necessarily want to do either one of those. So I sought, education or outside help from someone that knew way more than me about nutrition and training. And so like they taught me a lot more about, like macros or what your body needs or this, that, whatever, different ways to train. So his name specifically was Dr. Trevor Cash. He's amazing, probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. He got his doctorate in biochemistry when he was 20. So
Jeez.
and started, I think he was doing clinical research when he was 15. So he's like ridiculously smart, understands the body at more of a cellular level, but then also just the psychology behind change, getting people to do stuff. So keeping everything very simple and not overcomplicating with all the stuff. So
Cool.
the more I understood, the easier it became for myself, and then easier for my clients. But then replacing one obsession for the next, it was more like my fitness obsession turned more into learning about business because I learned real quick that like knowing a lot about fitness and nutrition doesn't translate to running a really good business. So it was like, all right, cool. Like I learned all that stuff and it was fantastic in regards to fitness and training, but that still didn't mean that the business was growing. And so like the once I shifted to learning about sales, marketing, business operations, things like that, that became kind of my new obsession. And now fitness and nutrition is more like on, I would say MED, like minimal effective doses, like whatever I need to do to get by and not let myself go. Well, my main focus is definitely helping people make more money.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It sounds like, I don't know if you're probably a fan of, I think Alex Hormozy has maybe mentioned Dr. Trevor Cash's name on a couple episodes that I've heard as well. And there comes that pivotal moment. I think he said something similar in his podcast where he's always been into fitness. You could tell he's a jacked and fit dude and he never skips dessert. So he has some balance or whatever. But you have to figure out what's your new obsession going to be. Do you want to work out 3 or 4 hours a day and be Mr. Olympia, or do you want to grow a business? Because you can't really have both sometimes if you're going to spend 4 hours in the gym every day. Like that, the time gets very difficult to allocate, I would imagine, as you're trying to level up in sales and marketing and all those other things, like building your business. So for the timeline, when did you guys start the gym again? Like what was the year that you opened it up?
Yeah, so we opened it in 2017.
Okay. And then you exited that successfully in 2020.
Yep.
Very cool. So you were able to scale that up, grow it, learn some things, put some systems in place, and then find an end buyer. How was that whole process? I mean, I imagine that was the first time you were going through it. Was it nerve wracking? Were you excited? Did it go faster than you expected?
Yeah. So yes, very familiar with Alex. We have actually known him for years. So he's the one that like where I started learning about business. So like didn't
Cool.
know anything about like business, and it was like, oh, we're struggling. It was when he had first started Gym Launch, so it was very raw and dirty in comparison to what they have now. Uh,
Right.
but like I liked it because it was way more. It was just like us and him because it was just the first couple of people. Where it's just like so like we got way more personal exposure to him, and then it's been cool to see him grow and evolve over the years. But everything that we learned from him, or that I learned from him, is definitely I attribute a lot of the success that I had to all of
From
most
what you learned there.
for sure. In regards to just business handling people, what is and isn't important, things like that. Um, so to answer your question, it was funny. We built the gym up and transitioned. We were actually in the process of transitioning the majority of our clients to remote. So like when we sold the business, 73% of our active members or paying clients were remote. So they didn't come into the gym at all to train.
Wow.
Only a small percentage actually came to the facility. And so that's what made it easy to sell. So we didn't actually sell the business itself. We sold accounts receivable.
Right.
Like we sold accounts receivable, and then we transferred the in person clients to remote. Whoever would, we came up with that. Had one on one talks with people. It's like, hey, cool. This is what we're doing, and offered to either buy out their contract or transition them over to remote. The majority of them went to remote. I think we ended up transferring like 96% of our active clients or accounts receivable to the new company. But I said all of that to say that we actually weren't looking to sell or get out of it. Someone, kind of seeing the success that we had, the growth that we had, the way that we were, acquiring and retaining clients, they were interested in it. I would say now, having a little bit more knowledge, that was probably would have been a good sign to not sell because that typically means, hey, you have a lot of room to grow.
Mm-hmm.
But given that it happened like right before COVID shut everything down, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the timing. You kind of lucked out right before things got crazy and that offer got reduced or pulled or something like that. Because I know a lot of people freaked out, right?
Yeah, and our like even like the company that we sold our membership base to, they still retain a lot of our members. So like
Yep.
our business probably would have been fine. It's just we didn't have to deal with the overhead of so like in Southern California, our overhead with anything else is like 16 grand a month. So it's like
Wow.
just getting rid of that, or having to deal with that if we were shut down would have been a little bit different than
Right.
selling it and having it be a remote entity when we did. So like I said, I didn't have to go through the normal process, or we didn't have to go through the normal process of like finding a buyer and doing all of this.
Cool.
It was just that we had gained some notoriety in that space, being connected with Alex and a bunch of other people. They saw what we did and they made us an offer. And my thought was like, well, we've learned enough. We have a skill set. If we want to do it again, we can. So like, let's take the offer and decide where we want to go from here. So
Right.
that was kind of our strategy. And just like full transparency, Alex was 100% against it. We talked to him. He was like, bad move. It's like,
Don't
well,
do it. Hold on to it. Yeah.
sounds good. I was like, well, with all due respect. And he was like, I don't know why you pay for advice if you're not going to listen. Like, ah, well, you do
It's
do it.
always like that. You're like, well, I know you have some good advice and you're super smart, but we just feel like going this other route. And the
Yeah.
same thing with real estate. I'm in the real estate space and people are like, never sell, keep buying, hold, add more rentals. You should never sell properties. And like, I sold my house in Houston when we moved here because I'm like, I kind of want to net 80 grand on this and just have that money to roll into whatever I do next because you have more liquidity, right? You have more options. Although if I had held it, could it have been worth more? Could I have sold it more? Yeah, but hindsight's 2020, right? But also I didn't want to have to be stuck renting it out remotely in another state. So I think it was the right decision for you at the time based on the information you had. And even if it wasn't, you learned something, you grew, and now you can apply that. I love what you said there too for everyone listening. I wanted to highlight how you said you had the knowledge. If you really wanted to, you could do it again. And that's something else that Alex always talks about is you can't take that away. You're the best investment. Whatever you put into yourself and you learn, you can take that and roll it into the next business, the next idea, the next venture without having to worry about really building it all the way up, because that skill set is something that you've acquired.
For sure. Well, and like that, I think that it's a little bit more of a abundant mindset versus like because like and
Yeah.
also confidence, right? Whereas like if there was lack of confidence or like I don't know if I could do this again, maybe I wouldn't have moved the way that I did. But at the same time,
Right.
it's, all right, cool. Like and it could have been ignorance, but I was like confident in the ability to be able to do it again. I did it once. I can do it again. But since then, worked with multiple businesses to help them have similar success. So for me, it was like, all right, cool, good call, and confirmation that like I wasn't crazy or just being ignorant at the skills that I had acquired in growing that business. And I think part of the reason that um, I had the knowledge that I did or learned what I did was because when we started the business, we didn't have a lot of capital, and so there was a lot of times where in the very beginning it was like make or break, right? And so like sometimes that speeds up learning because you don't have a runway. Whereas like, all right, cool, like we have to figure out how to do this, and so I probably condensed a few years worth of learning into even less just because I
You
didn't
had to.
necessarily, yeah, I didn't get there was no other option. It was like either this or we're getting kicked out.
Yeah.
The first like almost like 18 months we had the gym, we lived in the facilities just to keep costs down. So like me and my wife slept in the gym, very similar to Alex.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
it was like, but like that was the only option. It's like, all right, we have to make this work. And sometimes when I work with businesses now, owners that have deep pockets, sometimes that can be a bad
Detrimental.
thing for the business because it's like, oh, like it's fine, like there's no worry. Whereas like sometimes having your feet to the fire can help speed things up.
Yeah, for everyone listening, we're in Arte, and like that's how we connected and met through mutual friends and stuff. And I think I was typing one of the things on one of the webinars, and Andy was like, "Oh, I like that." I typed in, "When your wallet gets light, your mind gets right." Just what you said. When your feet is held to the fire and the bank accounts and the funds are low, you get more scrappy, you get more creative. Whereas a lot of people make mistakes, even real estate investors or investors in general or business owners, you got too much money in the bank. You think that you can just solve all your problems by paying for it. And that results in maybe overpaying, hiring the first person without really doing your due diligence, and they end up sucking and wasting money and resources. So that's kind of cool to hear just how you're sharing that of sometimes it's actually a bad thing to have too much money because you're not looking at things in as much detail.
Yeah. And it also highlights like sometimes in that situation, it'll let you know what you're actually capable of. So it's funny.
Yeah.
Sometimes like when your feet to the
Huh.
fire, you need to make a certain amount of money, you do. And then every
Right.
other time you're like, how come I can't make that? Like you can.
Because you don't need to.
Yeah, you're basically choosing not to. Whereas like, and so it's a really good example for most people. It's like, all right, cool. How many times have you been in a situation as a business owner where you
You had to make the money.
had to make ends meet, so you did, and then every other time, how come I can't make 10 grand today? It's like, well, because you don't really have to, so you're choosing not to. Like, there's a huge difference, but
Yeah.
you're capable if you actually wanted to.
And that is so important and so true, because how bad you really want it. Someone recommended I start listening to 10X again. It's been a couple of years, Grant Cardone, where he's
Yeah.
like, whatever you think you need a 10X it. Whatever your goals are, you need a 10X it. Because chances are if we get too comfortable, we're going to start coasting. And once you hit that $10,000 a month mark, if that's your goal, you're going to take your foot off the gas because you don't really need to push to go any further. Right. So how do you maintain that hunger? I mean, do you have that hunger to continue to grow and achieve more, or are you kind of aiming for your target monthly income and just maintaining that? Do you mind sharing? Because how do I
Yeah.
tap into that motivation? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
For me, personally, yes, like we're progressively growing, month over month or year over year, and I think it it just comes from exposure to things, right? Like the more successful we have, we're around different people, our quality of life changes, so it just
Yeah.
keeps hungry for wanting more, right? I forget the quote, but it's something along the lines of, uh, if we do not know ourselves if it wasn't for someone else. And
Mm,
so like sometimes like when you're lacking something, you're not exposed to it, you don't know that it's there and it's not a possibility, right? So
yeah.
our hunger or my continued hunger just comes from continually exposing myself to things I didn't know were possible, and then realize like, oh, this is something that I would actually like to have in my life on a regular basis. Because like I said, growing up, wasn't the best kid. Both of my parents were addicted to drugs. Same with my wife. Both of her parents were addicted to drugs. Rough upbringing, super, we'll say, humble to be nice and
Yeah.
keep things a little bit more PG. But like for years, like that's just how I thought people live life, right? And so the better I experience life, the more I want those types of things for myself, my family, not just my wife, but everyone else in my family. So it's like those are the types of things that keep me wanting more. Realizing like, all right, seven people don't have to share one bedroom in someone else's house. Like there's
Yes.
more.
and,
Uh,
and that's the thing too. I know Tom Bilyeu talks a lot about that. If you're familiar with him and his work, like in the projects and stuff growing up, he shares that story, how most people, whenever he said, hey, if you had a magic genie and you could make any wish, what would you want? And most people would only say $1 million because that was like the biggest number they could think of. And because their environment that they grew up in, like they never saw it around them, they were never surrounded by it. So it's crazy to me how much of our environment can determine our life and our viewpoint on how things are, because so much of our formative mind is created by the time we're like 5 years old. And
yeah,
so reprogramming yourself and breaking out of that and leveling up, that's a great answer, great response. You're getting around people who have more and are doing more at a higher level. And now you're seeing what's possible. Whereas before you didn't even know it was possible to have a mansion or do all those things, or, have 7 or 8 figure businesses. Like you just mentioned, 7 people living in a 1 bedroom apartment. Like it doesn't have to be that way.
well, and like I think the way Alex put it one time that I appreciated was that it's not necessarily just getting yourself around people that are doing more. The way that he put it is like that have a greater unit of measure, right? Like they measure
Yeah.
differently, right? Whereas like,
Yep.
and even for him, he was saying like back in the day, he would measure everything in regards to how many Chipotle burritos that could get him, right? Like that was his unit of measure.
Yeah.
Now like in where he's at, it's like, all right, cool, like it's what they call like sticks, which is $1 million. So it's like, oh cool, like how many sticks is that? Was like most people like don't have friends that use language like that
As a
and
measurement.
actually, yeah, as a measurement. So like if you're putting yourself around people that have a greater unit of measure for success or life or transactions or anything, then it kind of raises you to do the same.
Yeah, it just raises your standards and your thermostat. Tony Robbins, Ed Milet, all these folks talk about it in terms of raising what you believe is possible. Because if we're playing at a certain level, even if you were the varsity person on a football team in high school and you were a small town, that ain't nothing compared to like NFL, I would imagine. When you go out there and everyone's as good as the best person on your team, like that's just the baseline now. It's a new baseline, and you've got to kind of step up if you want to get to that next level. So
Yeah.
that's very helpful. So where you are now with your journey, how is it looking with your clients and your workload and your work life balance? Do you take meetings on certain days? Can you talk a little bit about what your lifestyle looks like now as opposed to when you were busy construction worker or even the gym owner?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, definitely, those are very similar in regards to like very very high output. Like I said, construction was working all the time, or when work was there, right? So I never necessarily took a day off because you don't get paid for days off. You don't get paid if you don't
Yeah.
work. And you never know when the work's going to be there or not. So it's like, all right, cool, show
Make
up.
use of it when you have it, right?
Yeah, and then when we had the gym, like when we first opened, it was we made the smart decision. This was my decision, bad call, but open 7 days a week from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. And like I said,
Whoa.
it was just me and my wife. We were living in the facility, so that meant like everything you did was like.
All day.
And then we had friends that were like, "Oh, you want to hang out after work?" I'm like, "No, I got to wake up at like
4
3 in
a.m.
the morning." Yeah, like Jesus Christ, no way. Um, but after doing that for so many years, now for me, I definitely prioritize, I would say quality time with my wife or myself or whatever we obviously like to explore for food or enjoy the environment that we've built for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I still work like, I would say most people, normal people, 40 plus hours a week. And it's typically on calls with clients, kind of helping them figure out situations. Sometimes it's reviewing some of the materials so I can help them build better systems and then going back and presenting it to them. So I would say I probably spend about 4 hours a day on meetings, and then anywhere from 2 to 4 hours on back end stuff or reviewing things for them so I can give better feedback. But I would say I wake up around 4:30 or 5 in the morning. I read a little bit for myself. Then me and my wife work out together. We go for a walk. I eat, and then I'm working by 8:30 or 9, and then I'm typically done by 3 to 5, depending on what's going on.
Very cool. Very cool. And because you've done what you did in the past, you have that contrast to say, man, it's kind of nice to be able to go on a walk and go work out in the morning and not have to be at the gym until 10 p.m., right? Every single day. And it was, of course, lessons that you learned along the way. And because you've been in that path of doing all those hours and spending all the time construction and in the gym, I like how you said my smart idea to have 7 days a week. Those
Yeah,
are crazy hours, especially when you're getting started. But I do admire all the hustle, and that laid the foundation, I would imagine, for what you've built now, because now you can be way more intentional. When do I want to take these calls? When is that last call going to be? Do I want to have Fridays off and like have no calls at all? You have that flexibility now, whereas
yeah,
before maybe you didn't because you had those hours posted on the wall.
for sure. And then also just like realizing like even as we continue to grow, it's like, all right, cool. Like what's the life that we want, the income that we want, this, that, whatever. And then being realistic about the amount of time it's going to take to create that, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and then allowing myself that amount of time. So typically like Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays is like full work days. Wednesdays, I normally don't work every other Wednesday. So for me, it's like, oh, I have the weekends off, and then every other Wednesday, me and my wife go do something, and it's typically the whole day that we'll spend together. But the way that I work with my clients, that allows me to be able to do that and still continue to grow or help them grow.
Very cool. I am curious. I'm not sure if you mentioned this earlier, but is your wife helping you now in your current business, or is she doing something separate? You guys have your own clients. How does that work if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, no, her job is me.
She manages you.
Yeah. It's a full-time job. I'm there. After the gym, I was actually contracted by my first contract was with Trevor. So I
Cool.
helped them scale sales and marketing for I did a year contract with them, and then after that went out to be fully independent and do it for a bunch of people. She helped them create two little programs that they still currently run, and then after that she stepped away and she's been like fully retired since then.
Nice. That's very cool. I'm just always curious to see how things change and people reinventing themselves. And maybe, construction was part of your life and then the gym. And now with your clients and consulting, you kind of have like evolutions on the skills have stacked. Maybe the business models have changed slightly, but you're able to still bring results for your clients and help them with the lenses that you have from the past.
For sure. And then that is something that I kind of joke about is like, oh, like to some degree, I've been in transformation my whole life, or I'm a fan of like, building things or applying skill or pressure and seeing the result that you can get. Like there's no difference between building, someone's dream bedroom or dream house, or helping them get their dream body, or helping them have, their perfect business. All of them are taking something that is someone's idea of perfection or quality of life that they want, and helping them bring it into reality. And I just think that the more I've learned, the bigger impact I can help. Because obviously, like creating someone's house is very different than the freedom that comes with building a business that's self-sustaining or predictable. Right.
Right, right. That's cool. And I know they always talk about health, wealth, relationships. I mean, it sounds like you kind of touched on all those different things with consulting and the wealth side and the building your body, because we all are trying to either move towards pleasure or away from pain. And oftentimes we have that ideal body we'd like to have or that ideal business. And wherever we are now is not quite where we want to be. And so we're either trying to move away from something or towards something, which is how you've been helping your clients. And really, I think that's how we all need to approach it. Because if you're not helping someone solve a problem or make their life better in some way, then they're not going to be as incentivized to work with you because it's not seen as a must. It's seen as like a nice to have or like it's not a necessity for them in that case.
For sure. And then like in regards to, I would say, sales or improvement or things like that. The reality is most of the time, like regardless of the price of anything, uh, as long as you're delivering a quality product or service or whatever, is that like the customer always wins, like always, because it
Right.
doesn't matter how much money they pay you. I mean, unless it's like ridiculous, but like, or continual, right? But it's like, it doesn't matter how much money they pay you. If they get something that's meaning from you, they will get that value for life. You'll spend the money, it's gone.
Yeah.
Like what you've taught them or the things that, as long as it's lasting, that they got from you will be something that they can utilize for the rest of their life. And so like if you do it right, then the benefits for them way outweigh whatever check they're going to cut for you because you'll spend money.
Exactly. And if that's not the case, then your business probably won't grow because you're not going to get referrals and people are going to say, oh, I don't know, don't go work with that person because I didn't get results long term. And the way I like to think of it is like the teach a man to fish versus giving them a fish. With what you're doing and opening eyes for other people and showing them things that they weren't able to see, now it's like they are learning how to fish for themselves to create more business and opportunities versus you just giving them a fish and then they need you again 3 months later because like you solve their problem one time versus really going to the source and teaching them the right way.
For sure.
That's awesome. So great takeaways for everyone listening here, how to add value, how to make sure people continue to refer business to you and that they're getting more value in excess of what they are paying. Cause like that doesn't matter. That's something a lot of us have to overcome is how much is too much? Is this too expensive? And it's like, compared to what? What's the ROI? What are they getting back? What's your main focus or your vision for the next couple of years? Are you enjoying where you're at? Is there any room for improvement that you're trying to work on? Do you mind touching on where you see yourself going?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's always room for improvement, right?
Always.
Like you said, everyone's not where they want to be,
And it always, the bar always rises too for all of us.
for sure. And so I have been enjoying doing the consulting. And realistically, my thought with this is, basically write it until the right opportunity presents itself. There's no rush in getting in anything, long term or locking myself in. They Clients have been extremely happy. Most of the people that I work with are referral basis because of the depth that we work with. I only work with a small handful of people anyway, so it kind of
Yep.
allows me to keep a decent runway for myself in regards to clients to pull from. And until I someone presents me with something that's like, oh, like with selling the gyms, like this seems like a great idea. I'll do that. But until that happens and what that looks like, I have no idea.
That's cool. I mean, I tell people I don't even know what's happening next week or next month. I mean, I have a couple things on the calendar, but a lot of it is fluid and kind of like you. I mean, I'm just making cool connections, such as meeting, with yourself. And if an opportunity presents itself that makes sense for a partnership or let's JV on a deal, or what if we did a couple of collaborations with like content or something? There's a lot of opportunities that present themselves when you're not looking for them and when you don't need them. It's like that law of attraction thing, right? If you're kind of needy and you're being weird, you're going to repel a lot of clients or prospects or potential partners. But if you're being abundant and you're coming from that place of confidence and abundance and all that, the right opportunities are going to present themselves in the right relationships, right? You're going to make a lot of cool friendships, like your relationship with Alex Ramosi and all these other people. It's probably really cool to see like the rising tide lifts all boats type of thing.
For sure. That's why, like, men and women across the board, they always say, "Oh, all the good ones are taken," right?
Right.
Because they don't have that need or that necessity. It's like, all right, so they could be themselves, and that's what makes them a good catch.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I love it. Well, we've talked about so many great things. Is there any question I should have asked you that I didn't ask you, or anything you'd like to add that we didn't talk about in this conversation?
Uh, I I have no idea if there's something
I
you
mean,
want.
like, is there one thing that people love to ask you, or like some nugget of knowledge that you feel is a huge takeaway that people can implement? I mean, we talked about a lot of it today, but like maybe one of your biggest breakthroughs that you're like, I wish I had learned this earlier.
I think the biggest thing that it like to keep it simple would be, if there's anything that you want in life, take a look at the people that have it and ask if you're willing to live like them.
Boom. That's
Uh,
it.
because like, and then like the easiest way for me to relate that, and that's something that I picked up, back when I was heavier into fitness, is that like, if someone wants to be a body, like everyone wants to look like a competitor, but no one wants to live like one. And so it's like, it's up to you. You could say like, oh, you want that all day long, but if you're not willing to do what they do every day, then that's okay.
Yeah.
You want something different, right? So like, what's a priority for you, and then go after that. Or if or split the difference. Where it's like, all right, cool. If your desire to step on stage is more just because you want to look and feel good or be confident, then like, all right, what does that look like in relationship to all the other things that you have as a priority in your life?
Right.
And that's where, like, for me, currently the life that we have, like, that's what I want. It's like, all right, how much effort do I need to put in to have this quality of life, or vice versa? And so it's like, whenever you have a goal in mind, you look at like, what is it going to take to get there? And the reality is like you achieving that goal is dependent on whether you're willing to do what it takes. And so like it's not how bad you want the end, it's like how willing are you to go through it. And
Yeah.
so if you're okay with that, then like cool, take that first step. If not, then look somewhere else and that's fine.
That's such good advice because a lot of us want the outcome, but then we don't look at the process. And that's why so many entrepreneurs don't make it because they're like, I want the Lamborghini and the yacht. I don't know about this whole process, or you're not seeing what the people did to get there. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that when it comes, time to do the work. They're not willing to roll up their sleeves and do that. So that is very wise advice. I appreciate, ending on that note. Everyone, look at people who have what you want and see how they live and ask yourself, is that something I'm willing to do? And if not, then maybe we really don't want what we think we want. We just kind of like the idea of it, which I think a lot of people got to get stuck doing. So, Mickey, where can people go to connect with you, to learn more about you, check out your content? Where's a good place to send them to?
Instagram, I am Mr. 20 Pack.
I love that. Mr. 20 Pack.
Yeah, that's for 8 abs and 12 pack of beer. So
I will send people that way, and I'll drop that link in the show notes. And Mickey, thanks again for your time, man. I just enjoyed hearing about your story, getting to connect with you a little bit more, and just I love hearing those stories of overcoming challenges and maybe rougher upbringings and construction business, the gym business. You learned a lot along the way, and clearly, like you mentioned, it's just getting started in terms of getting a little better every day. We're never where we want to be. There's always another level, and it's really cool to see how many levels you've progressed. Can't wait to see where you go next.
thanks, sir.
Thanks, Mickey.